Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Today, we're going to do our next formula, but we're going to start by finding x through using the tangent. So go ahead and use our tangent formula to find what x is, and then we'll be moving on to our next one. Okay, so we've done tangent, which is opposite over adjacent, and now we're going to talk about sine, okay? And we're going to use the ratios, find our side lengths, and find our angle measures using the inverse, just the same way we did with tangent. So the sine formula is sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So we're still finding our opposite side the same way. And then our hypotenuse, remember, is always across from the 90-degree angle. It's the longest side. And if you were to draw an arrow from the 90-degree angle over, that would be where the hypotenuse is. So that is super important so that you can figure it out. For this formula, we don't care about adjacent. We only care about opposite and hypotenuse. Okay, so we're going to start by just finding those ratios. Again, the same thing we did last time. So I am going to pull up this other screen. And the first thing we're going to identify is going to be the hypotenuse. Okay, because the hypotenuse is never going to change. Oh, I guess there we go. So the hypotenuse is never going to change. So that's the first thing we always should identify. It's always across from the 90-degree angle. And then if we're looking at angle A, we're going to look opposite, so across from that. So our sine of angle A ratio would be the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, if we were going to do it based on angle B, which is here, then now our sine of angle B would be 8 over 17. No matter what, it's going to be 17 because that is our hypotenuse. Okay, so again on this one, if we're looking for angle R, we're just pulling it up so that we can get to our side. But the first thing, again, is figure out across from the 90-degree angle is our hypotenuse. And we're using angle R. So opposite of angle R is 3. Okay, so that gives us our opposite, that gives our hypotenuse. So we would say the sine of angle R is equal to 3 over 5. Okay, so I'm going to have you guys try this next one. You're going to find it for angle B. Find what the sine ratio would end up being. Okay, so now we're going to start with trying to find the side length, solving for x, and we're going to do it where you have to find for the hypotenuse and also where you have to find for the opposite side as well. So we are still going to use that exact same formula that we're going to have the sine of an angle, and in this case of 30, is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse, okay? The sine of 30 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. That's how we set it up. We know that it's 12 because that's the opposite, right? We know that x goes on the bottom because that is the hypotenuse, and that's what our formula says. So now we're going to do some solving. And just like in tangent, when x was on the bottom, we replaced them. We're going to do the exact same thing for sine. So in order to solve this, we're actually going to say that x is equal to 12 divided by the sine of 30. When we do that, we end up getting that x is equal to 24. Okay, and I would highly recommend, because I've had a lot of people message me about how to use their calculators, I would highly recommend that you're going through and typing in these things as I'm typing them through so that you can see whether your calculator is doing it the same way and you're coming up with the same answers. Okay, so we are going to try it again on this one, and on this one, On this one, obviously, we're going to be doing it for the opposite side, not the hypotenuse side. But let me pull this up. So same thing. We're going to have the sine 35 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse, right? And so this one is going to be where you just times both sides by 17 to solve for x. So you get the sine of 35 times 17. And I'm going to round to 2 decimal places. So you get 9.75 centimeters. Okay, so those are the 2 different ways that you can solve for a side length. So we're going to do an example of each one again. Okay, so this one again, it's very similar to the one that we just did, where we are looking for our opposite side. So we would say the sine of 57 is equal to y over 15. We know 15 is our hypotenuse. So we know we're going to times both sides by 15. And that y is going to be equal to 12.58. And again, I would recommend that you are doing these with me to make sure your answers are ending up the same. So now we're going to do another one that is solving for the hypotenuse. Okay, same thing that we have been working on. So let's pull this one up. This is going to say the sine of 20 is equal to 10 over x. Remember, hypotenuse goes on the bottom. And this is where we are going to replace these two so that x is going to be 10 divided by the sine of 20. And when I get that, I should get x is equal to 29.24. It actually says 238, and we would round that to 24. So I'm going to have you guys practice one of each. So this first one is practicing for our opposite side. So go ahead and set up your ratio and solve for x. Okay, so now you are going to find a hypotenuse. So you're going to set it up exactly the same. Your x is just going to be in a different spot for solving. So go ahead and solve for the hypotenuse. Okay, so now we're going to talk through angle measure, and it is going to be using our initial ratios that we found, and then now we're going to be using the inverse sign or the sine -1 to be able to find it. So, okay, it was paused for a second. All right, so we are going to pull this up. Okay, and we are looking for A. So here's A. We know this is always our hypotenuse. And from A, this is our opposite. Okay, so we are going to be using our inverse sine of our opposite over our hypotenuse to find our angle measure. And again, on most of your calculators, it's going to be a shift sign. Some people were saying they couldn't figure out where it was. If you are on your phone, you have to turn your phone sideways to be able to see your sine and tangent button. But worst case scenario, go to Google, type in scientific calculator, and it would do it. Another thing you could type in arc sine of 8/10 into Google, and it would do it for you. Arc sine is the computer way of saying your inverse sine. It's the exact same thing. So if we do that, 8 divided by 10, we end up getting 53 degrees, 53.1 degrees. Okay, so the hardest part is making sure that you are remembering that inverse sign because that's going to make the difference. Okay, so again, for this one, we're looking for angle A. So if I pull this up, looking for angle A, we know that this is our hypotenuse. We know that this is our opposite. So we would say our inverse sine of opposite over hypotenuse. And again, I would hope that you are plugging these in with me to make sure that your calculator is doing the same as mine. So this one would be 43.6 degrees. Okay. One more example. And for some reason it didn't show up, so I'm just going to draw it. Whoa. Let me move this over here. Okay. So we are going to have 12, 37, and 35. And we are using angle D, which is this angle up here. So we're going to have those two. So we would have inverse sine 35 over 37. And when we plug that in, we end up getting 71.7 degrees. Okay. So you guys are going to practice this very last one, and then that is all the new stuff that we got for sine. So go ahead and find the sine of angle C with your opposite and hypotenuse. Make sure you're using the inverse sine for that degree. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys found sine to be equally as easy as tangent. You do have a 3-question exit ticket that you need to get done, and you do need to get 3 out of 3 correct on it. So like always, come to office hours if you need any help with anything, and have a fantastic day.